We're going to be taking you through the progress of our black comedy feature film.
Who are you, by the way? Nobody knows who we are.
What this is a DIY cinema podcast for DIY filmmakers. The idea is that you don't wait for permission, you just start.
This is our first feature film, something we're going to do together. You're going to get it warts and all.
So we just go into it?
I kind of think we could.
This is DIY Cinema Cult.
Cool. Hello, Marc.
Hello, Aaron. Welcome, everyone, to episode... Do you know what this is, Aaron?
Yeah.
Episode 10
Oh, a decade.
of DIY Cinema Cult. We're in double figures.
That's pretty impressive, isn't it? Considering the probably the sort of lack of speed we started with.
Yeah.
But how lockdown has become quite kind of fruitful for us, I think.
We were late bloomers, I think is what we could say, isn't it?
Yeah, late bloomers. We shouldn't say that, lockdown has been a positive, but in some weird ways we have made the most of this slightly more flexible hours and time that we've had to knock out 5 podcast episodes, all of which I think have been amazing.
Yeah. I was like, I was feeling the lockdown in the last couple of weeks because I didn't have any work, and but I was still very, very busy. It was either podcasts or editing my partner's makeup tutorials that she's putting on YouTube and
I've
Instagram.
They've been great.
And so I seem to be very busy, and obviously working on the scripts and things like that.
Yeah,
but just nothing that was bringing me any money, and it was kind of slightly. There's a weird thing where, it's very hard to work on a script when you're really scared about feeding your kids.
Exactly.
You have real life anxiety about making money.
Well, it's the classic starving artist kind of quandary, isn't it? As in, do you make better art when in some way, your life depends upon it? Or do you just need a modicum of safety so that you aren't worried about the wolves at the door? And I mean, I'm sort of similar to you, as in, crikey, I felt like I could easily fill a day with all sorts of interesting things. I'm busier than ever, even when I didn't have paying work, as in, actually, maybe that was what your life would be like if you were paid more for these kind of interesting little side creative projects. But then sadly I got busy because, again, like we mentioned, we're still relying on the paychecks and the paid work to kind of keep the wolves from the door. I got busy and I have spent 3 weeks somewhat depressed as a result of being busy because I'm thinking, there's a film sat there on a hard drive of mine and I can't really get it done. And it feels like this sort of extended period of somewhat kind of creative potential starts to ebb away because you're just back to the grind, albeit still from the confines of my studio and with a Zoom call or two more than I would have had in my normal life.
Before the lockdown, you would just think, God, if I was just giving some of this time, like a portion, just 25% of this time I spend working for clients or other companies on my own stuff or my own projects, how dreamy that would be. And I guess it's the kind of thing, be careful what you wish for, isn't it, really? I was just thinking, if I could just stay at home, if I was given a week or two at home, just to sort all these little jobs out that I want to do in my own personal projects. And it turned out that the universe gave us all more than 2 weeks to do these things. And the reality is, when you are struggling and you don't have enough money and you can't pay your rent, it is actually very mentally hard to sit down and write, made up stories about things and noodle with scripts that haven't got funding yet. It takes a lot.
I think what's been noticeable about the lockdown experience is how much disparity there has been between people in different circumstances. So what's interesting, I think, because we're starting to get the first signs of coming out of lockdown. We're now allowed to go jogging as long as we like. We can now sit in the park and have a picnic and various things. So the changes are starting to happen. But what I keep hearing from is basically how intensely stressed and busy all my freelance friends are, because they're either worried about the lack of work and there's been no government help whatsoever. So they're scrabbling, they're fighting, they're coming up with every possible idea that they can to find some work. Or you hear from your furloughed friends, or furloughed, with this new term that I'd never heard of before the lockdown, and they're kind of baking soda bread and learning Mandarin, and particularly those who don't have children. And it's one of these amazing things. Well, you're having the idyllic life that I would somehow wish for. And in fact, I think I wouldn't waste it learning Mandarin and making soda bread. I'd be making a film. I'd be writing a book. I'd be doing something. But then everybody's perspective, everyone is in their own bubble. And it's easy to kind of say that, their life has been much easier than others. And of course, we know that actually our lives, in fact, are not even that bad, because some people, a friend of ours is he lives in a council estate. He's on the top floor. When you weren't allowed to go out, his whole life was basically in his little flat and his little living room, ranting a lot on Facebook, because he was literally, he had nothing. But I mean, there's been a huge amount of disparity, I feel, and it's an interesting time to see what happens with creative people, film industry people, as we come out, as it does feel like it's going to soon change.
I mean, I think like you're saying, I feel that I'm constantly having to tell myself that I'm very lucky, because I mean, we're in a flat that we don't have a garden, but we're in the top floor of a house, so we get to look down at the garden like a couple of ghosts in the attic.
Looks nice down there.
Yeah, it looks nice down there. And the family who have the downstairs floor have this amazing garden to play in that we only look at. I mean, they are the right people to have it, because they've got two very small kind of toddlers. So they are the right people. But me and Debbie and the baby just stare out at it very kind of wistfully,
longingly.
But as you say, there's people in much worse situations than us.
You are listening to the debut feature film podcast. This is DIY Cinema Cult.
And the script has gone through some revisions too. And I mean, actually, I reread the last one, and there was definitely some quite meaty changes.
I kind of sent a work in progress over to you, where I've been just looking at slimming it down and making it into more of a script that we could shoot for a much lower budget, i.e. a chunk of change that we could ourselves pull together in some way. Every line now I'm looking at thinking,
that's expensive.
We really need that. That's going to cost us another, couple of quid. So I'm slimming it down now. And your feedback that you gave the other night was great. So
the script that I've just sort of read, the other day, it was certainly feels like there's meat on the bone that wasn't there before. We talked a little bit about it in the previous episode, that the Emma characters really started to come into life. And I think in our new world that is very comfortable with a kind of lo-fi aesthetic, shot on phone type of a aesthetic, I think Emma's character is taking on more and more and more resonance and in a way kind of importance, because we all find ourselves in a way one end of a small rectangle that we hold in our hands, or a rectangle in front of us on our desk. And so it's interesting how the aesthetics of filmmaking will have been affected by this after the lockdown is lifted, but that we're going to just be extremely used to seeing stories being told with a very small and slightly low-fi, low-res rectangle, even in the cinematic setting.
Even if we make ours very cinematic, which I would like to do, I think there's still that it's inbuilt into the story that people share information in this way. And that's how information's kind of passed on and things go viral. Everyone's filming and documenting all at the same time.
I've seen a couple of examples of it being done well in a cinematic context, but I don't think I've seen it in a context like ours, where it's an unfolding, almost a feeling of a real-time event in some fashion or another. So I think it's got a load of potential to kind of enhance the script as it is. It doesn't feel like an add-on for sort of gimmicky purposes, of which I certainly have seen that in the past. But so what else have you been kind of looking at in terms of the sort of script stuff? You've kind of been slimming it right down.
Yeah, I also added in, there was a kind of structural thing I added in, which was this idea of the rule of three, which it's something you see in storytelling throughout time. You know, there's the three bears, and the heroes of old tales of old often had three challenges they had to go through. But it's something that is it's a rule that happens in stand-up comedy, not just stand-up comedy, but comedy in general. And you'll notice it when you watch stand-up, any stand-up. If you turn on Live at the Apollo tonight, you'll see it. And it's very simply, a comedian will bring up a topic or a subject 3 times, and he'll introduce you to it at first. Then 2 minutes later in his stand-up, he'll bring it back, and there's a kind of a laugh because you have a bit of recognition, and the audience has a bit of recognition. And then he brings it back a third time, and the third time he brings it back, he twists or subverts this pattern that he's created, and that creates a laugh. And when you learn about joke writing and stand-up comedy, there's certain little structures, little conventions that you learn, and one is the rule of three. And it's a very simple technique, but it always works, and you always see it in comedy, and especially you especially see stand-ups do it in stand-up comedy. And so what I've done is I've written that rule into the actual structure of the story. So now there's an element to Don's act that he repeats 3 times, but actually now the film is broken down into those 3 times that he performs that act. I don't want to give too much away.
I love the idea that basically everybody who's listening to this has just got these very weird piecemeal versions of this script, some of which have now been cut, some of which when they actually get to see the film, they'll be like, hang on a minute, weren't they talking about this character? And that character's not even in it. And
I don't know how much we should, maybe we should do a podcast episode where we just tell everything that's going to be in the film. But I don't, we also want to keep stuff a surprise.
Keep stuff fresh.
I mean, essentially, I'm not going to ruin it, but Don is very much a comedian who's he loves Tommy Cooper. He's in the old kind of Saturday night, slightly vaudeville, Morecambe and Wise school of comedy. And he has a very simple Tommy Cooper-ish bit that he does in his performance with a bunch of magician's flowers that he kind of does once, then he does twice, and he gets a little bit more of a laugh. And it's kind of cheesy, and it doesn't kind of work. And that's part of what we are saying in the story. Benny, who's a very kind of brash, cool, alpha male, very modern comic, he doesn't get this. Don performs it during the film, and what we see is him perform it once and twice. We don't see him perform it the third time. And then right in the third act, when all the shit's hitting the fan and Don feels like he needs to draw an end to his routine, shall we say, he does it one final time. Him actually doing it is the thing that activates this kind of final shot.
It's the kind of ending,
DIY Cinema Club.
There's a lot of books out there about the story, and of course the classic structure of a story is the 3 act. So the 3 act structure seems to be somewhat kind of ubiquitous for good and bad, as in you certainly see it kind of misused or in some way formularized in a sort of Hollywood kind of playbook, how to write a hit kind of books. And so it's interesting that the rule of 3 is applicable in that sort of comedic sense. We were going to talk a little bit about some of those kind of script writing guru books, because there's a lot of them around. And for the DIY filmmaker, do they apply? Should we be thinking differently, or what's your experience of some of those books?
I mean, I'm not a massive fan of them, but then I looked at my bookshelf and I've pretty much got most of them. Like I've read all of them. And I think I probably started with Robert McKee story. That's kind of a classic. And John Truby, Anatomy of Story. The weird thing about them is that they're very close to self-help books that you might get if you're trying to lose weight or change your life or become a business entrepreneur or what have you. In the sense that they kind of there's lots of people out there who want to write that screenplay that's going to make them a success, and that's
not like us at all. Nothing like us.
No, and that's who these books are kind of geared at. And what they do is they seem to give you exactly the same information, but using different language in a way that is trying to convince you that those other books that you've read, they had it wrong. My system is the one you need to do. If you use my system, you're gonna.
It's very cultish in a way.
It is, and there's a lot of cultishness around old Robert McKee, because he does these incredible talks that I haven't been to one, but they're very, very expensive, and he is a very cantankerous old man and is very famous for having this horrible kind of temper on him, and will kick people out of his talks for if they kind of have any objection to the things that he's saying. Sounds like a bit of a dick, to be honest.
Yeah, sounds like us, our administration of our Facebook group.
But it's that thing of he's very much creating his own brand. But then if you look at him and people like John Truby, and you actually look at the scripts that he's written, he hasn't written any. Hasn't written anything.
No.
So if he'd written Chinatown, and was being a very arsey, cantankerous bastard in his talks, then I would probably go, well, you kind of just have to give it to him.
Yeah.
But he actually isn't. He isn't actually a very successful screenwriter. He's a very successful novelist about screenwriting.
Yeah,
and he gives very successful talks about them, but he's not a successful screenwriter.
Well, it kind of comes a little bit back to that sort of can do, does, can't do, teaches, which I don't think is entirely true, because obviously to be an effective teacher, you need to have some insight into things. But when it comes to script writing, to a certain extent, the proof is in the pudding. But a lot of successful script writers say they don't read that shit because they think it's all hocus pocus. But
I know. I mean, I found myself when I realized I needed to stop reading these books was when I was reading one by a guy called Blake Schneider, and it was called Save the Cat, which is another famous one.
Yeah.
And he had a very simple, easy to follow, step by step, and it's all painting by numbers. Again, thing that I don't,
which I distrust deeply.
No, because look, there's no painting by numbers pictures hanging up in the National Portrait Gallery or the Tate Modern.
Yeah, not that we know of, anyway.
Not that we know of.
Some of the better ones might be really good fakes, but
yeah. So, but and I started, and then also I read about Bert Schneider, and I was like, oh wow! But this guy actually had screenplays that were greenlit and made into feature films, and I was like, wow, maybe this guy knows. But the film that he had, his biggest screenplay he got made was Stop or My Mum Will Shoot. Have you seen that movie with Sylvester Stallone and the lady from Golden Girls?
Well, funnily enough, no. Probably because it sounds like a complete pile of shit.
Yeah. So, but that's how bad I got. I was like, well, maybe this guy knows because he wrote Stop or My Mum Will Shoot.
Yeah.
So maybe he knows what he's talking about. And then I realized, Mark, you're going mental.
You've gone deep.
You've got to you've read too many of these books.
But I think there's a modern equivalent to this, which is the YouTube tutorial. Yeah. And I think the world of the YouTube tutorial is kind of fascinating to me, because some of these people certainly have more power and influence than Martin Scorsese or what have you. And I think we mentioned it a little bit in a previous episode that in a way they may well be relaying useful information, but they also understand how to structure these short tutorials or how-tos or top 10 tips or all of these various tactics to kind of hook you and to addict you to the idea that you've just got to watch the next one, and this will mean that you can then get on and do your thing and you'll be better at it. But what it does is it creates, and I think it's the same with the Hollywood scriptwriter books, it creates a kind of a constant flow of the same thing. Because what I see is that then people are doing their YouTube tutorials in the style of other people who've done their YouTube tutorials. So it becomes this kind of snake that eats itself. This kind of
weird soup.
This weird, postmodern layers on postmodern layers of things that basically people don't really create anything new. What they do is they just create versions of versions of versions. I've got Ida has just joined us.
Hello, Ida.
Hello, Ida. So you've got to come and say hello on the podcast if you're going to be
hello,
here.
my love.
Go
How
on.
you doing?
Come and say hello. Don't kick all the glasses all over.
Hi, Ida. Do you want to say hello to all the listeners?
Hello.
Oh,
Hello.
hi.
Ida's been
Hello,
my little mascot while I've been working in here. But she's going to go now because we're going to finish there. Thank you, Ida. It's a kind of a weird world of people kind of increasingly becoming the same. It's like a Benetton version of creativity.
I mean, and I've got to say, I've watched a couple of these guys on YouTube, and their tutorials are amazingly sharp. They look incredible. The sound's great. The graphics,
production values are very high.
Amazing. It's better than a lot of TV you see. But it's you look at what they're making, and they're doing drone shots of a nice lake. There's nothing there.
Story.
It's no story. Yeah, they're not telling any stories. They're just shooting something so beautifully,
yeah. And I think that's what it is. Actually, a lot of the time, it's the description of how to create high production value rather than the description of how to make fascinating and deep stories that connect to other human beings.
Yeah.
But one book that I have read, which kind of breaks the mold a little bit with the kind of 3-act structure, Hollywood guru thing, is actually a book called Into the Woods by John York, which I mentioned to you in the past.
Yeah, I want to read that one.
Yeah, I think the difference is, I mean, he's in a way somebody that you look down his list of sort of achievements, and he's a little bit closer to somebody you would probably respect because he's been involved in episodic and narrative storytelling for a good 20-30 years. He's a huge amount of a body of work, particularly through BBC drama. And what's very interesting about his book is that he doesn't tell you by reading his book you're going to learn how to write a successful script. But what he does do is he says, actually, all storytelling at its very, very, very base layer is using an extremely simple but ever potentially complex algorithm system, if you like. And of course, that's very appealing for I want to get successful. How do I learn how to do this? But that doesn't mean that he's saying all good stories, because actually what he's saying is just all stories at their very, very heart have this same structural and in a way, like, what the seeds of every kind of moment of drama or comedy is all based around the same thing. And he of course unpicks the 3-act and what he describes as actually more traditional is the 5-act story, where he describes that, and the 5-act he says came from Shakespeare's time because because they actually could only burn the lamps per act for a certain amount of time, so they had to stop. But what that meant was that it sort of established a certain long form storytelling that was really structured around, I suppose, this idea of in some way, a person going on a journey. Somebody has to go on a journey. That may well be in a more of an ensemble piece, that a group of people go on a group of different journeys. So it's never what often happens in the Hollywood version is it always becomes about a hero, usually a man, and usually a man in some way overcoming or fighting against evil creatures or powers or bad guys and winning. And so, and he described that as the 2-dimensional version of the story. But the 3-dimensional version of the story is the fact that actually all drama needs a sense of somebody trying to get to grips with a new reality they discover themselves in that is overwhelming, and they may fail. And the failing you would describe as charity. The overcoming of that you might describe as a thriller, and somebody kind of, you can subvert the structure of it, even in an art film. But there's still this sense of somebody has to undergo, or multiple people have to go through huge change in order for drama to be described as drama. And of course, in comedy, you still have this, because you still have somebody going through changes to create the dynamics and the shifts of comedy. So out of all of those books that I've kind of looked at, I mean, I haven't read as many as you, and I'm sort of, I'd love to have a look at your shelf at some point and kind of go, oh yeah, this is a well-thumbed one. But this is the one actually I've really enjoyed, because it's not a script guru book. It's a description of the system that he has understood, that all stories, and in fact, not just cinema, but novels, theatre, and in a way, what he describes as all moment of drama. And the thing I loved was that he describes it as micro and macro. So he says that this goes down to the act level. So within a film, there is 3 or 5 acts. Within an act, this also gets broken down. So, yes, the protagonist may have to discover challenge, and they may find it struggle to overcome that challenge, and But it also goes down to the scene level. And I thought this was fascinating. And he said that, even what you would describe as art cinema, still some change has to occur at a scene level. Some change must occur in a scene or between 2 scenes for it to actually work as narrative, because narrative is change. At the very, very base of everything, narrative is change, going from one place to another, a journey.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds a little bit like Joseph Campbell, Hero's Journey. I've read that one as well, and it was kind of fascinating the way that, comparatively, our folk stories, no matter where you're from, what kind of culture you're from, whether they're the kind of the Bhagavad Gita, or they're kind of Nordic kind of legends.
Which, of course, you've read cover to cover.
Cover to cover, yeah.
All 200 volumes of it, or whatever it is.
No matter what kind of culture you're from, your folklore, your folk stories, the structure is incredibly similar. Joseph Campbell broke that down, and he takes like an Irish folk story, and he compares it with the Nordic one, and the hero's journey in each of those stories, no matter what cultural background you're from, is almost identical. And a lot of them reference as well Aristotle, Poetics. It's a very short book. It's a very small book.
It's very short,
but it's incredible to see that thousands of years ago, he put down a set of rules, and it was theatre then and dramatics, but rules that haven't really changed that much to the films that we see on screen today. There's elements there that are conventions that we still follow.
And I mean, the way that John York in Into the Woods describes it as a very simple process, which he does sort of mention back to Aristotle, which is thesis, which is really the idea of the thing, that where you are now, antithesis, which is what opposes that thing wherever you are now, and then synthesis, which is the learning from the thing that you were against or opposed to, and then coming to a new place. And that is like almost like a kind of mathematical structural breakdown of the idea of change, which I thought was really fascinating. And what I loved about it was that it wasn't trying to tell you this is how you're going to make a really good sort of piece of cinema that's going to be very successful. He's just saying, look, this is the fractal level awareness of what story is, which is some change going from one place to another. And there are, of course, like you say, Joseph Campbell pulls apart myths going back thousands and thousands of years, an amazing kind of array of kind of tallying between those stories. But there's also a huge, an enormous, almost infinite variation that can be created from this tiny, tiny structure, the idea of change.
Absolutely.
And you could get super cosmic about it and talk about the yin yang and all kinds of other stuff. But it's what it comes down to is that story is things changing in some fashion, going to the unknown, going through challenge, going through something different. And I mean, what's Don's hero's journey in a way? I was pondering this. What are the woods for Don?
In Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, there's this kind of diagram. It's a circle. It's a perfect circle.
Yeah.
At the very beginning, he's kind of giving this call, which is, it's the call to action.
Yeah.
And at first the hero has to kind of reject it because he doesn't think he's got what it takes to do it. And there's many steps that follow, but the hero kind of finally accepts the challenge, and he meets the kind of old wise man who gives him some kind of amulet or kind of boon to kind of help him through.
Yeah.
Then he kind of travels to a netherworld or the underworld or some kind of cosmic other land, and then he returns, and he returns kind of back to exactly where he was at the start. But the difference is he's completely changed, or he has the answer or the boon or the golden fleece, whatever it is, that then helps him and his villagers and what have you. And it's weird that you think that, well, how does this kind of transpose itself to modern storytelling or cinema? And it does. Don has to go through this performance that he's laid out for himself. That is something that's going to be difficult for him to do. And actually he does reject it at first. In the script, he decides that maybe he doesn't want to do it, and he goes out back, and there's a scene with this kind of weird chef. The chef,
one of my favorite incidental characters that our wonderful friend Luca, who was in our last podcast, will hopefully.
And he seems like an incidental character, but he's a very important character because he's this kind of angel who kind of appears to Don and says, "No, you've got to do." And Don's ready to back out, and he said, "I don't think I can do this. What I've planned for tonight, I don't think I've got what it takes to do. I can't perform this." And he was just like, "Look, you just got to step up and do it." And Don takes his advice and gets on stage.
And I mean, actually, strangely, we were talking about kind of it appearing in modern films, and actually, I think it's everywhere in modern films. Of course, the famous example is in Star Wars, which George Lucas was obsessed with Joseph Campbell, of course. And I, as part of I do martial arts, as you know, and we've been doing regular film nights, which has been really fun for me to sort of combine my two big loves, martial arts and filmmaking, as well as music, obviously. And so last night we watched, as a school en masse, we watched The Matrix, which, when you described the Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, that you basically described
it's completely there.
Neo.
It's completely there, yeah.
It's exactly his experience, isn't it? He rejects it at the start. He bottles out, and then he meets Morpheus, which is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and undergoes many challenges, and then comes back at the end to kind of a sense of completion. It's changed. So it'd be interesting to hear what our viewers think of in terms of their own stories, and to whether they recognize either what I'm loath to sort of to do is to describe it as a formula, because I don't think it is a formula. What I think is that there is the two things. There is the Hollywood script guru formulas, which effectively are there to give you success, is the idea. And actually, I think there's a huge amount of hokum in that. But maybe the seeds of what they're describing and where they've got that from, which obviously is from the Joseph Campbells of the world, and the John Yorke's book, I think it does a fantastic job of distilling a lot of those arguments, even more than Joseph Campbell. He's not so much talking about it from a guru perspective or from a kind of anthropological perspective.
Yeah.
But underneath all of these things, there just has to be some sense of change in characters, protagonists. And that doesn't have to be an individual as well. What's interesting about the John Yorke book, he really doesn't say there has to be a male who's a hero who goes through this process. He says this can happen to an entire ensemble. I mean, I was thinking about it in terms of my documentary. And of course, what in a way, I actually have a fantastic 5-act story about young utopian rave sound systems who discover something amazing, like kind of an amulet in a way. They discover this lifestyle of freedom, and they come up against the state, and the state wants to crush them, and it all goes bad. Yeah. And it's in a strange way. It's like, wow, this is that 5-act story or 3-act story that John Yorke's talking about.
I mean, this is why I think that a lot of these guys who write these screenwriting books, like Robert McKee, they're kind of snake oil salesmen in a way, because through reading them all, what I found out is that you kind of know everything in these books anyway. As kids, we've been told stories, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, the Three Bears. These are all stories that have that structure built within it. So we know ourselves what is a good story, and whether we can formulate that ourselves to make a good story is another thing. But, you know, our grandmas can sit down and watch a film and know if it's shit or not, because if the story doesn't work, because no matter who you are, inbuilt in you, you have this knowledge of what a story is and what makes a good story, what makes a bad story. And if a story doesn't achieve these kind of goals that we want, or doesn't kind of hit these kind of marks that culturally and psychologically we want them to, it feels wrong and it feels bad. So we have this information inside us already. It's just finding a way that we can access it to, you know, technically write a script, make a film ourselves.
Yeah. And I mean, it should never be seen as a template. And this is where I think two interesting things happen with the kind of YouTubers, is that what the tantalizing and addicting aspect of the YouTuber is that it kind of says, follow these steps. And in a way, the Hollywood screen guru is, it says, follow these steps and you're going to be big. But actually, what I would suggest is more going on is just these are the steps underneath whatever. And you either make those, as in all story works like this, but you either embrace them and you allow them to become deep and complex and rich, or you go with a two-dimensional route and you just see them as a template. And then you churn out the same shit everybody else always done.
Yeah, well, I found when I was reading when I was deep into these books, the Robin McKees and stuff, I found they actually gave me anxiety, because when I bought them, I'd have a screenplay on the go that I was trying to write as a feature.
Yeah,
and they would just make me depressed and worried, because I was like, my God, the screenplay I'm writing doesn't fit into
page 25. I need another inciting incident. What am I going to do?
My inciting incident happens at the wrong page number.
Yeah,
and, you know, and I'd get very, very stressed, and I'd be shoehorning my own story into these formulas. And I found out, you know, that's completely the wrong way to go. I mean, look at when Sylvester Stallone wrote Rocky, which won the Oscar that year. You know, his inciting incident doesn't happen until page 45 or something. You've got this incredibly long sequence where you're just watching Rocky Balboa kind of live his life, and he's a bit of a failure, and it goes on for way too long, according to Hollywood screenwriting gurus. But all of them talk about it in their books, because they're kind of saying, well, there are exceptions to the rule, because and it was perfect because the story needed it. You needed to hang out with Rocky Balboa for that amount of time to realize that his life was in this weird stasis. He wasn't really going anywhere. He was stagnant. And then it happens, just like it happens for him in his life and career. This chance came quite late, and it kind of blows up, and that's the kind of impact of the story. You know, if you'd written it that straight away, the inciting incident happens and Apollo Creed comes along and says, you know, come on then, let's have a big championship fight. It's not a successful story. It's not a successful film.
And I would argue that contemporary films are edited. I mean, you know, a lot of cinema is edited too much to the formula these days, that it thinks that audiences are going to lose their care, attention, of a narrative if you haven't hooked people in by whatever it is, 20 minutes into the movie for X, Y, Z. And obviously there are great examples of that being effective. So, you know, in a way, The Matrix is a brilliant example of a film that does a really good job of using traditional structures. It's a bit long for the Hollywood paradigm these days, but what it does have is a very interesting universe to dive into. But then, you know, our love of, you know, more surreal things, you know, our love of Louis Buñuel, David Lynch. You know, David Lynch would scoff at the idea of doing anything of any length for any particular reason, because he is a believer and a lover of allowing the thing to breathe its own life, to live its own life for whatever the story and whatever the story deserves, the idea.
Yeah, I mean, and David Lynch has his own conventions and techniques in his own mind. Like, he has that lovely, baffling explanation of The Eye of the Duck.
Oh, I love
Remember that one?
Yeah, for sure.
The Eye of the Duck scene. So he states there's often a scene in a movie that has its place, and you can't move it. It needs to be in a certain place because it's the eye of the duck. Just like a duck's eye is perfectly positioned on a duck's body. If you moved the eye of the duck anywhere, the duck wouldn't make sense.
I love that so much because you know, as a filmmaker, he has a particular visual sense, and even though, you know, if you relayed that in a script writing guru sort of setting, they wouldn't understand what the fuck he was talking about. Yeah. But to me, I always think, well, what is the duck's eye of my idea? And I think what the duck's eye often is that initial spark, that initial excitement, the initial feeling that you have with an idea that you think, oh, I love that. And when you take that away, and often, you know, we've had experience of sort of, you know, paid for projects where an initial cool idea is said, and then it gets so watered down that it ends up just being this kind of depressing mishmash. And I see that a lot on a Netflix series. I see that a lot on cinema that's kind of eventually been cut to ribbons. But the duck's eye to me is that initial spark that gave you a sense of that this is worth doing. And you've always got to come back to that, because if you don't, and that, you know, it's the love of the thing, right? It's the love of the thing. If you don't come back to that, then your idea will become lost. That's not to say it doesn't change. It changes radically from that moment onwards. But the love, whatever the key, whatever the duck's eye was, has got to still be there once you finish that thing.
I agree. And I also kind of think that the eye of the duck thing, I think what David Lynch is describing there is it's kind of being opposed to these kind of people in these kind of books that we've been discussing today. He's kind of saying you've got to go with your instinct. You've got to kind of taste the idea or just feel it. How does it feel? You know, does that is that scene or is that moment perfectly placed in your film? Don't look at John Truby telling you what page it's got to happen on. Just feel it. You know, is that scene in the right place? Is that moment in the right place? Is it the right time? Is it the right? Does it have the right impact? I think he's talking about instinct and really being in tune with the story that you're trying to tell, rather than trying to follow formulas.
Yeah, I've just had a quick flick through Into the Woods, and what I love about it is that it starts off, you know, quite kind of high concept, and then he starts boiling it down to like unbelievably tiny formulas. I mean, well, I reluctantly say the word formula, but he says this line, he says, boiled down to its essence, the shape becomes, there is a problem. The protagonists go on a journey, they find the solution, and they return.
There you go, easy.
And there you go. That'll make you a Hollywood hit, no matter what. Oh, and there's one bit I missed here, because this is the 5 acts. There is a problem. That's Act 1. The protagonists go on a journey. That's Act 2. They find the solution. Act 3. They return. Act 4. The problem is solved. Act 5.
Oh, over. It's done.
And of course, the problem is solved is very open-ended, because in the tragedy, the problem is solved might mean they end up dead.
Yeah.
And the problem is solved in the thriller might mean they get the bad guys or they don't. So it's very, very open-ended, and this is where there's a cliche, isn't there, in Hollywood filmmaking, that you've got to really like the protagonist, which is generally a man, and generally they're a 100% good guy.
You got to see him doing something lovely in the first scene or something.
Yeah.
You got to.
And of course, actually, this is bullshit, because, you know, I always think about the example of Downfall, the film about Hitler. And it's like, well, of course we don't like him. He's Hitler. He's the worst possible guy. But it's a really compelling story, because you get for a moment what the bizarre world and pressure that had been created around somebody as horrifying as Hitler. So you don't empathize with him because you like him. You empathize because you're suddenly put into his world and you get it. And it makes you more disturbed. It makes you realize how disturbing the world that he was in was. But if you didn't believe his character and what he was going for, you wouldn't empathize with the story and what the story was trying to tell you.
100%.
So there's so many ways to kind of debunk the sort of Hollywood way of doing things without throwing out the idea that story has some essential elements to it which are really worth remembering.
You are listening to DIY Cinema Cult.
I mean, what I would say is, instead of reading these books, I'd say read screenplays, because they're available online. There's places you can find a bunch, loads of feature screenplays. There's sites that kind of give you all the recent Oscar winners.
Yeah.
Or if you can delve deeper, just older films. And I've been really enlightened by some fascinating screenplays I've written, particularly William Goldman's Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Oh yeah. I was just waving to Debbie there in the background.
Yeah, Debbie's in the background. Say hello, Debbie. You're on the podcast. Say
hello. We've just been bringing in our families. It's getting very casual, isn't it? My kids, your other half. Yeah, it's getting very casual.
Because it doesn't follow that. He doesn't have the slug lines at the start of the scene, the exterior, interior necessarily. Yeah. What he does is he will. There's a voice to the action lines of the screen, because often screenplays, when you first read a couple, they appear very, very dry.
Yeah.
They're very sparse. Apart from the dialogue, the action is often it's very kind of slightly robotic and feels slightly kind of uninteresting.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the way that a lot of people will teach you to write screenplays. But William Goldman in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, his action lines are so exciting and entertaining. And it feels like you're being told the story by one of the characters in the film.
Yeah.
If not Butch or Sundance, you're being told by a third person who is kind of running alongside with them.
Yeah.
And it just makes the screenplay feel so exciting and fun, just like the movie is. And also he does a thing which a lot of good screenwriters do as well, is, you kind of guide a director. Of course, you don't say, right, it starts on a wide shot, then we go to a close-up.
Yeah.
But just by describing in a very economical, suggestive way, not prescriptive, he's suggestive in what we're going to go, in what we're going to see. And I just found it fascinating. And it's weird. What he does as well is he will do little subheaders for a character. So he'll say, like, Butch Cassidy underlined, he looks at so-and-so. Sundance underlined, he picks his teeth for the So, he's describing these shots. And that's a technique I've used in our script routine, because we are all in one location, one room. So we don't jump from interior, the comedy club, to exterior the next day. We're all in one place. So in order to get that feeling that there's multiple lines of action going on, I kind of do what he did in that, Don Morby, or on stage or backstage. Instead of doing an exterior backstage, which breaks the flow of the film, suddenly, if you're reading it in your mind, suddenly it's like, okay, it's a different scene now. Instead of breaking up the action in that way, you keep the flow going and you just give these little subheaders. I mean, I completely nicked that from him in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, but I think it works well in routine. I read a copy of Gus Van Sant's screenplay for My Own Private Idaho, which is one of my favorite films of all time. And that script's bonkers. There's just the formatting is screwed. And he does it intentionally, because he wants people who are from studios who could be slightly weirded out or put off by it altogether. And he uses different fonts. He uses bizarre fonts.
Comic Sans, definitely.
He's not far off, but he really goes bonkers on the script. And so it just goes to show you, you need to use techniques that serve your story the best, rather than worry too much about what gurus or people are telling you should format your story or script as.
You are listening to the debut feature film podcast. This is DIY Cinema Cult.
Well, it was weird. I mean, I'm supposed to be doing this course with a lady called Kate Lees
Oh
next.
yeah, what's her thing? What's her
Well,
vibe?
out of everyone, I think she's the one I trust the most, because I was quite far down the line to getting funding on some BFI scheme a couple of years ago. Around the time the UK Film Council got binned by the government in all their infinite wisdom,
Yeah.
suddenly there wasn't a lot of money for short films at all. The only money there was for a small selection of big budget shorts.
Right.
And
That's really weirdly counterintuitive.
counterproductive.
Yeah.
And so I got kind of quite close to the end of this thing. So far, I got invited to this directors weekend, and there was a handful of directors who were in like the final 20, and I think they picked 10 or something, or 15 to get made. But it was like a 50 grand short film you're going to get.
Wow.
And I thought, well, let's try and get this made. And I had a script I really liked, and I went down there, and we had workshops, and we had a workshop with this lady called Kate Lees, and she's a script editor at the BFI, and she's worked on tons of films that have kind of gone through them and gone through the Film Council, and she's worked on Full Monty and what have you. I don't know the list of her films, but if you check her out, she's very, very, she's done a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I thought her workshop was brilliant. I really, really enjoyed it. And she's the only one that sticks in my head as someone I would go back to. And because we're at this stage now where we're kind of reviewing the routine script, I fancied a bit of a refresher before we go into shooting. I just wanted a bit of a kind of a refresher on screenwriting and the structure. So I booked myself on a course, but of course it's like next month or the month after. So hopefully it might not be happening now with the lockdown.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see.
Well, it will probably be a similar format to our current experience, as in exclusive access where you're sat in front of Zoom once again, and there's 50 different people looking like the Muppets at the start of the Muppet Show.
Celebrity Squares. Yeah.
Celebrity Squares. So we kind of probably should start wrapping up. I'm thinking about our DIY film festival thing.
Oh yes.
We've sort of started to post ideas about it on the Facebook group, which is growing every day.
Don't be shy. Don't be insecure about your filmmaking abilities. Don't be worried about what you're shooting on. We don't care if they're shot on phones. We realize we're all in lockdown. We don't have all the equipment at our disposal.
Break some rules. Break the Hollywood rules. That would be, maybe we should suggest in some ways that they've got to break all of Robert McKee and all of these people's rules massively.
Fuck Robert McKee.
Fuck Robert McKee. But it's still got to be 1 minute. That's our rule, because we're the fascist dictators of the
maybe
cult,
it's
obviously.
a 1-act structure. Maybe it's a 19-act structure, all within 1 minute.
Yeah. See how many rules you can break within your 1 minute, but obviously it's got to start and it's got to finish and it's got to be DIY and it's got to be freaky. Yeah. So we're really looking forward to seeing those.
Are you gonna do one, Aaron? What are you gonna do?
I might well try to get something done. Maybe I'll do something with the kids with my DV camera.
Yeah,
that was why I was tempted to go really DIY, circa 1998. So I've got my trusty XM1 here. The flip out screen doesn't work anymore.
Oh, nice.
So you'll see that. It's got a 20 times zoom. And it's standard definition. And I actually found a blank tape, which amazing. Was a joy. So 90 minutes of goodness to be cut down to 1 minute of freakiness. But I just think there was something really joyful when I actually charged the battery and it turned on and it makes the noise from hell. You've got to quick listen to this. You've got to listen to this noise.
Is that while you're shooting? Oh, no.
That's while you're playing back and while you're shooting.
Jesus
so
Christ.
You certainly want to do dialogue afterwards.
My God.
But that might add to the energy in some way.
Oh my God. Definitely.
So that's my plan, is to go sub iPhone, sub smartphone, and go for DV capture. And I've figured out I can actually capture it on my computer. So I was very happy about that, because I think that feels like the way to do it, in the garden on a DV camera.
So send us your film. Send us your 1 minute freaky DIY 1-minute films.
And we'll get whoever comes up with the sexiest, maybe even all like 2 or 3, if there's a top 3, we'll get them on the podcast.
Yeah,
won't we?
definitely. We're going to probably run it until, give people time, maybe to the end of, what did we say, July or June or July?
End of June, maybe
Yeah.
till lockdown is totally done.
Yeah.
And then, you know, then it's kind of gives people a sort of a neat and tidy time to kind of get their things in.
Yeah.
But I think that'll be great to sort of see what people have managed to make in a DIY fashion.
I feel like we need to come up with a way to intro and outro the show. I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of podcasts have like a way of doing their intros. You know what I mean? Like kind of, hello,
Yeah.
I'm Aaron and I'm Mark, and this is the.
Yeah.
We don't do that, do we?
But just
We kind of just
well, what
shamble
we
in
do
and
is-
out like a couple of drunks.
Yeah. That's basically where we are. But what we do is we go, hello, Mark, and hello, Aaron.
Goodbye then.
And now that's become our kind of that's become our de rigueur.
It's
isn't
not
it? I
exactly
think
the
that's-
2 Ronnies, but it'll do. Mate, all right then, good one.
Well, the next time we could even legally meet in person, 2 meters apart, because the rules have changed for lockdown.
We might be back in the
So
shed
may-
soon.
Well, yeah, that may be a week or 2 away at least, but we could potentially meet in your local park, perhaps with a cold drink or 2 and a portable recording device of some description or another.
Nice one, mate.
Nice
It's been
one,
lovely.
mate. Been a pleasure.
Night,
Take
listeners.
it easy. Good night, listeners. Auf Wiedersehen.
Follow us on Twitter at DIY Cinema Cult, or on Instagram we are DIY_cinema_cult. Seek out the DIY Cinema Cult group on Facebook, or why not email us at DIYcinemacult@gmail.com. Follow us.